Jim Rogers is here. He's a legendary investor and author, claims now to be unemployed, but still has a lot of wonderful things to say. Jim, welcome. So great to have you.
I'm delighted to be here, Henry. I'm your fan. So.
Jim, lots of people before President Trump was elected predicted that if he was elected, the stock market would tank in fear. Here we are. NASDAQ is 20% higher than Election Day. We seem to go up 1% a month at minimum. How long is this going to continue, and what's going to happen?
Well, I do remind you, it did tank for 2 hours. For 2 hours, total collapse, and then it came to its senses. Well, everything he says, tax cuts, infrastructure, bring the money back, wonderful stuff. Cutting regulations, it's wonderful, wonderful stuff. Of course, none of it's happened. None of it's happened yet, but people are still living on the hope and printed money. There's a lot of printed money from central banks all over the world, and the rest is history.
One of the things I've always admired about you as an investor is that you don't talk about what should be. You figure out what is going to be, and then you do that. So what is going to be with respect to the stock market? What's going to happen?
I learned very early in my investing careers, I better not invest in what I want. I better invest in what's happening in the world. Otherwise, I'll be broke, dead broke. Well, what's going to happen is this is going to continue. Some stocks in America are turning into a bubble. The bubble's going to come, then it's going to collapse. And you should be very worried. But Henry, this is good for you because somebody has to report. So you have job security. You're a lucky soul.
Well, yeah, TV ratings do seem to go up during crashes, but then they completely disappear when everyone is obliterated. So nobody is hoping for that. But so when is this going to happen?
Later this year or next.
Later this year or next.
Yeah. Write it down.
And what will trigger it?
Well, it's interesting because these things always start where we're not looking. In 2007, Iceland went broke. And people said, Iceland, is that a country? They have a market? And then Ireland went broke, and then Bear Stearns went broke, and then, Lehman Brothers went broke. They spiral like that. Always happens where we're not looking. I don't know, it could be an American pension plan that goes broke, and many of them are broke, as you know. It could be some country we're not watching. It could be all sorts of things. It could be war, unlikely to be war, but it's going to be something. When you're watching Business Insider and you see, that's so interesting, I didn't know that company could go broke. It goes broke. Send me an email, okay, and then I'll start watching.
And how big a crash could we be looking at?
It's going to be the worst in your lifetime.
I've had some pretty big ones in my lifetime. It's long.
It's going to be the biggest in my lifetime, and I'm older than you. No, it's going to be serious stuff. It's going to be very. We've had financial problems in America, let's use America, every 4 to 7 years since the beginning of the Republic. Well, it's been over 8 since the last one. This is the longest, or the second longest in recorded history, so it's coming. And the next time it comes, in 2008 we had a problem because of debt. Henry, the debt now, that debt was nothing compared to what's happening now. In 2008, the Chinese had a lot of money saved for a rainy day. It started raining, they started spending the money. Now even the Chinese have debt, and the debt is so much higher. The Federal Reserve, the central bank in America, the balance sheet is up over 5 times since 2008. It's going to be the worst in my lifetime too. Be worried.
I am worried.
Good, good.
Can the Fed rescue us? Can anybody rescue us?
They will try. They will. What's going to happen is they're going to raise interest rates some more. Then when things start going really bad, people are going to call and say, you must save me. It's Western civilization is going to collapse. And the Fed, who's made up of bureaucrats and politicians, will say, well, we better do something. And so they will try, but it won't work. It'll cause some rallies, but it won't work this time.
And we are in a situation where Western civilization already seems to be possibly collapsing, even with the market going up all the time. Often when you do have a financial calamity, you get huge turmoil in the political system. What happens politically if that happens?
Well, that's why I moved to Asia. My children speak Mandarin because of what's coming. You're going to see governments fail. You're going to see countries fail this time around. Iceland failed last time. Other countries fail. You're going to see more of that. You're going to see parties disappear. You're going to see institutions that have been around for a long time. Lehman Brothers had been around over 150 years. Gone. Not even a memory for most people. Well, you're going to see a lot more of that next time around, whether it's museums or hospitals or universities or financial firms.
And are we at risk of Western civilization turning to fascism? again? Can this be a repeat of the 1930s?
It has often happened that way. There are signs, I mean, you watch Business Insider, you will see signs of that. There are people in Washington who sound a lot like people sounded 70 or 80 or 90 years ago. There are people in the world who sound a lot like that. And when you have things like this huge bombing in London this weekend, that makes other people say, we got to do something. Now, I would remind you, Benjamin Franklin said in the middle of wars, a lot of wars when he was around, said anybody who would give up freedom for security is going to wind up with less security and less freedom. But they always do that. It's always happened. Smart guys like Benjamin Franklin warn us, but we have people in Washington who are not as smart as Benjamin Franklin these days.
So with this outlook, later this year or next, worst thing we've seen in our lifetimes.
Yeah, but it won't start off the worst thing. It snowballs. You know, somebody will go bankrupt and things will go down, the markets will go down, Federal Reserve will do something, they'll rally. But by the end of 2018, 2019, you'll know. You'll know something's happened.
What should people do with their money now, then?
Well, I've said many times in my life, here and other places, people should only invest in what they know. They shouldn't listen to me. Maybe they should listen to you, but they shouldn't listen to me. Because if you invest in what other people say, you don't know what you're doing. You know what they said, and you're probably going to wind up losing money. Just so stay with what you know. And if you find opportunities, invest. I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm investing in Russia and China, Japan. These are markets that are down 50% from their all-time highs. The U.S. market's at its all-time high. Now, I know your parents taught you, buy low and sell high. Don't buy high and hope it goes higher. So these markets that I'm looking at are depressed. I bought some Russian stocks last week and Russian bonds the week before. I'm looking at agriculture. Agriculture is extremely depressed. These are places that I'm looking at. But don't listen to me. Listen to what you know, because when times get really tough, if you don't know what you're doing, you're really going to lose everything.
And speaking of Russia, you just arrived in New York from Russia, a dinner with Vladimir Putin, who we all watch on television, have very strong thoughts about one way or the other. What do you think of what's going on in Russia? And what do you make of this bromance between Putin and our president?
Well, I would love to see everybody happy. I mean, the idea that we're all going to shoot each other and blow each other up is absurd, if you ask me. Nothing good has ever come from any war, ever, even if you win the war. You lose millions of people, billions of dollars, capital, et cetera, et cetera. So war, I'm not an advocate of war. I would suspect that things are going to calm down. Right now, the press in America is hysterical, and the Congress is hysterical about Russia. I'm not sure why. I didn't change my vote because of Mr. Putin. Did you change your vote because of Russia? Did anybody in this room change their vote because of Putin? And what did he do? What could anybody do? We're always interfering in elections around the world. Washington interferes in New York's elections, you know, Chicago's elections, everybody's. So we're always doing it. I don't understand the hoopla at all.
But you believe that Russia will continue to prosper as a state or start to prosper?
Henry, in my experience, I have learned that if you find something that's hated, that has a lot of value, and things are getting better, you probably will do fine. And that's why I'm investing in Russia. I first went to Moscow in 1966. You weren't even born when I went to Moscow. And I came away saying, this will never work. This is going to be a disaster. And I was bearish for the next 48 years. You talk about a long-term bear, I was a long-term bear. But now things are changing dramatically in the Kremlin, so I have changed and I'm a bull.
So you are observing all this from Asia. What do people in Asia think of what's going on in the United States right now?
Well, they're confused. You know, Mr. Trump's obviously confused. He keeps changing his mind almost daily or weekly or sometimes the same day. So they're not sure what's going on. They do see that Mr. Trump seems to have given Asia to the Chinese. He withdrew from TPP. He's done all sorts of things like that. He's withdrawn from the climate change. Well, that means there's only one country that can fill that vacuum, and they're already filling that vacuum, and that's China. Now, this is not good for America. I'm not particularly happy saying this, since I'm an American, but he has given Asia to the Chinese.
We are in one of the...
Teach your children Mandarin.
We will have to move there, I think, for that to happen. We're in one of the longest expansions we've ever had. Any sign of a recession?
In the U.S.?
In the U.S.
I don't see one at the moment, but the problem is they always come when you're not expecting them. I would suspect by the time the end of this year or next, it's going to start somewhere that we're not watching it. Whether it's the Illinois pension plan or Madagascar, who knows? It's going to start somewhere, and then we'll know. But if you look out the window now, everything's great.
Everything's great.
And that's a dangerous sign.
Exactly. Is the Fed doing the right thing?
No. Oh, Henry, you're bad for my nervous system. I'm going to have a seizure right here on Business Insider. They have no clue what they're doing. They've driven interest rates to the lowest in recorded history, and every other central bank in the world has followed them. Interest rates are negative in many parts of the world, as you know. This has never happened in recorded history, and it hasn't worked. And it's going to end very, very, very badly.
So what should they be doing then?
They should, first of all, they should resign. they should
Just disband themselves?
Well, they should abolish the Fed and then resign, yes. Now, in America, we've had 3 central banks. The first 2 disappeared for a variety of reasons. The world can get along without a central bank. Now, the world without central banks has a problem, but the world with these central banks has a problem. So, yeah, we'd be better off without this central bank. This central bank now has $5 trillion of debt. I mean, assets. It's built its assets from $800 billion in 2008 to $5 trillion. That's trillion with a T. It's gone up 5 or 6 times in, 9 years? No, these guys they're setting us up for a horrible, horrible disaster. I told you it's going to be worse in my lifetime, largely because of the central bank in the U.S. and the others who have followed. What they should do, they're not going to resign. They're not going to abolish them. They should let interest rates, they should move out of the interest rate market. Their mandate was to have a sound currency. That was their mandate for 60 years or something. And then they said, okay, and you must also have a good employment. So they have 2 mandates. Nowhere does their mandate say, and keep the stock market up, and keep the bond market up. Nowhere does it say that. And these guys, if they went back to their old mandate of a sound currency, then we'd all be better off.
In your investing life, as you have gained more experience and gotten older and made more bets, have you become more sure of your view of the world or less sure?
Well, I've made so many mistakes in my life that I can never be more sure. So I make many mistakes, many, many, many mistakes, but I'm old enough and experienced enough now to know that I have to doubt myself for everything I do. If anything, I probably could become more self-doubting rather than more confident.
But you seem very confident that we are headed for disaster.
Yeah, aren't you? You haven't been watching Business Insider.
No, I have been too cautious for too long. It's been 4 years now that the market has been extraordinarily expensive, just keeps getting more expensive. Things that seem like they're headed for disaster somehow work themselves out. Everyone is optimistic. Nobody seems to be paying attention to what's going on.
That is clearly correct. Every word you just said is correct. But now, it's nearly 9 years. It's the second longest expansion in recorded history in America. So we're getting towards the end. You were a little early. But that's why you built this big company, because you had to be cautious and you were wise.
Jim, it's wonderful to have you. Thank you for joining
My
us.
delight.
It's always great to talk to Jim Rogers. Thank you all very much for joining us. That's it for this week. And as always, a big thank you to Fidelity Investments for making the show possible. We'll see you next week.